Hey guys, thanks for tuning back into the Harlan Project. Got the Chinese skid steer behind me, and I do have an update for you. So, after the initial video, as you may know, I had very little drive time on it, operating time on it, and I was basically going over the initial observations, the size, dimensions, sort of the ergonomics of it. And after that video, I said, well, heck, we got to play with this thing. So let's go move some dirt around. Let's go try to push some things. And guys, I didn't get 10 minutes before this thing started to overheat. And I think it was something that through the forums I was anticipating, and so I know I was really paying attention to the degrees here, the thermostat, which is in Celsius, just like the rest of them, and it pretty quickly, after about 10 minutes, got up to about 60 degrees, and so my antennas started going up, and I'm going, oh no. And it started to creep, and it was a very slow creep after 60 degrees, but it eventually got to 65, 66 degrees, and I said, you know what, let's just shut it down right now. Let's just see. So I let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, decided to get back on. Of course, that really wasn't enough time for this to cool off. We are here in Central Florida. The ambient temperature outside is in the 70s. So when I fired it back up, it was maybe at best in the mid 50s. Well, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. So I don't care, residential or commercial application.
Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
Did the same thing again. Temperature started to creep up, got into the mid 60s, kind of crawled. And I think I'm emphasizing that it was crawling 1 degree at a time because gosh, I'd love to hope that maybe it was going to start to level off. Maybe it was actually going to start to cool itself off, but I really never got a chance to see if that happened. It eventually got to 67, 68, and I said, gosh, let me shut it down again. So one of the things that I noticed in my initial kind of researching these Chinese skid steers is that they would come with an oil cooler, which this one has, but they would come with an oil cooler in the front here. And it sat right above the muffler, which, you know, you kind of got to laugh. But what some of the folks were doing to solve their overheating issues is they would just reverse the fan. So the fan, I believe, you'll have to watch some of these on your own, but I believe in some cases the fan hooked to the cooler on the inside was pulling cooler ambient air through the radiator into the machine. Makes sense how our cars work, right? Well, they would actually find out by reversing it, it was solving their overheating issues. There were some good theories out there, some that guys probably smarter than me, but my brain was you're pulling the hot muffler air back through the cooler, so you're throwing hot air on the thing you're trying to cool. You guys are watching this, you can comment below, you can educate everybody else and me included. I'm always here to learn, always want to learn. But I mean, there were a couple of, I think, plausible ideas that suggested maybe the fan, the built-in mechanical fan on the motor, and then the fan on the cooler were fighting each other. And that was the problem. So if you could at least get all of the air moving from the back of the machine, past the muffler, through the cooler, and out the hood, that was enough to get it to cool down. Well, my cooler's in the back, so I don't necessarily have the muffler issue, at least I don't think I do, because mine is pulling cooler ambient air from the outside, across the cooler, into the cab, if you want to call it a cab, into the container here, and it should be exhausting it out of here, out of these ports on each side, or out of the hood. So that made a lot of sense to me. So I said, hey, what the heck? I've seen this. A couple of guys reverse the fan. I'll try the same thing. I do have a thermal gun that I could put on here, and I'm kind of kicking myself at this point because I should have shot this with the thermal temperature gun to make sure that this probe is reading correctly. So that's still some testing I can do in the future. But here you can see, and please don't laugh at my electrical. I actually like to do electrical. This is not what I would consider a good job. This is what I would consider new machine, just trying to make it work, put it together. In fact, my heat gun to take some of these heat shrink wraps and seal them the correct way, as most of you probably deal with, I have a family member who borrowed it and has not brought it back. So that reminded me I needed that tool. But what you're looking at here, the fan is now working as it came from the factory. So it will pull air from the outside this direction across the motor. Now here's the mechanical fan. I don't know if there's some type of fighting going on as some of the forums described. Maybe. But that fan is lower than this fan. So when this door is closed, the bottom of the cooler fan comes in about right here. I don't know how much they're fighting because they're pretty close. But here's where we're at. What you're seeing here in this ugly wiring job, I've got a hot and a ground, 12 volts, right? And I've got that. I went ahead and just, when I was putting it back together, I said, okay, clearly going to have to add a second fan. So I went ahead and just wired that in. If this works, we'll be here to see it together. But if this works, I'll make sure I clean all this up, get some wire loom on this, and strap it down and make it look good. If you watched my initial review on this Chinese skid steer, I found this nut sitting on the bottom of this machine, and I figured out where it went. Well, fortunately, it didn't go to anything too important. It went to this bolt, which the manufacturer decided was a good pin for the swivel. So that just went in here. That's how they had it. And they just had this nut, if I can do it, hand tight, which is how I'm going to keep it from now on. Well, or at least until it vibrates loose. But I think, well, probably what would be a good idea to do here is just put in some type of pin system with a little snap clip. In that same initial review, I had mentioned that I was having trouble putting gas in here because it would just burp down. I thought maybe that there was not a vent. I still don't think there's a vent in this tank, or at least if there is, I can't find it. But what I figured out, the problem, was this guy. This was in the filler neck, this filter. Well, this is fine, and I appreciate having a screen, but the bottom's not screened. So, and the tolerances are too tight. So what would happen is this would fill up with water. Well, let's hope not water. But it was filling up with fuel, and then as this would fill up, the fuel couldn't get around this lip because the tolerance inside the neck was too small. So you could put in 6 ounces of gas at a time. Well, we have an inline filter here, and I'm going to hope that I don't have any crud in my tank. So this thing, not going to work out. In that initial review, you may have seen me fooling around with the exhaust tip. Well, you can see the sort of golden colored piece of metal here. Well, this is how it came from the factory. Well, that stopped about where my finger is here. Well, with this thing overheating, I assume that we have multiple problems going on, one of which could also be that the exhaust itself is not exiting the cab. I keep calling it cab. What would you call this? The chassis? The frame? But it wouldn't exit. And I could prove that because the inside here, all around this, had the oily residue that you would see, carbon buildup from an exhaust. So this is just a piece of 1.5-inch exhaust tube, maybe slightly bigger because I had to cut some reliefs in it, but some 1.5-inch exhaust tube that I had laying around here in the garage. And we're going to see if that helps at all. And then if it does, I can eventually make this a little better. So I do think at the very least, it should be getting out of the chassis, the cab. Comment below, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. Then we'll all learn together. So if we can get that heat out, that's at least one way we can get the heat out. I did go ahead and order a muffler jacket for this. I think this is just too small of a space that no matter what, these holes here, they're just not enough. It should probably have that heat contained, especially because it sits, 6-7 inches above the pump there. So that's another issue that I'm hoping will help. The muffler jacket, we're gonna put a secondary fan over here, and then I've got the back piece removed with the fan now pulling the cooler ambient temperature in from the outside like it was from the factory. And I'm hoping that works. I'm hoping that it can get this to run cooler. So we'll see. Kind of disappointed. I've only got 10 minutes on this. I know at least one of you saw this wood and have started to type how much of a knucklehead I am. Well, that's fair. But it is a heavy duty 2x6. It is sitting right on top of one of the idler wheels, and it is caught pretty well and tight inside this piece of steel here to where it can't slide out. And the weight of the bucket's already on it. So that's what I got for now. I've only owned this machine for a day, guys. Outside of that, I don't see anywhere. Yeah, I don't see anywhere where they've put a prop rod in for this. So this is the secondary fan that I bought. It's nothing special, just off Amazon. They said it's for a motorcycle. So looks to be pretty durable. I don't know if you can see that, but if you look close enough, we can see evidence of where the opening actually is. And so we're not going to overly complicate this. For now, we're just going to set this in there with a little piece of tape. I'm going to try to line these holes up to where I could run a screw through or a bolt. And then we'll go see if we can get it to fit. I got ahead of myself. There's actually two metal brackets back here holding on this heat shield. So I'm gonna have to cut around those.
That's a lot of stuff.
It is. Yeah. Oh, good. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week. We're still trying to tackle the cooling issues. We've done a couple modifications with the secondary fan. We removed the back plate to allow for some more cooling, did a muffler jacket, and extended the exhaust tip. Somewhere we got to have this issue resolved. So you know the drill. Like and subscribe. It helps. It builds the algorithm. It does things that I'm not smart enough to know. Click on a video below, somewhere here, there, around, or just search for it, guys. I'm new to this, okay? Thanks.